I have loved gardening with my kids since pretty much they were old enough to sit up and like actually start touching and interacting with the plants. And now that they're older, my oldest daughter is 5 and my youngest is 2, almost 3, I still love doing really fun activities with them in the garden. So I thought I'd put together a video on some of the activities that I like to do with my kids in the garden that I think is part of the reason why they love it so much. Like my kids love their time in the garden. They can't wait to come out with me and help me pretty much do anything. If I say, I'm coming out to doing, it doesn't matter what it is, I'm coming out to do this, and I say, do you want to come with me? And they both say, yeah, yeah, and they're so excited to come. So I think that that's obviously a really nice feeling to have. And then also just the fact that they love to eat out of the garden. So they eat a lot of vegetables and fruit, but for sure vegetables that they wouldn't have otherwise necessarily touched. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I talk about the types of things that I like to grow for kids. But I thought I'd put together a video on some of the ways that I have seen success gardening with my kids, and maybe some ideas that you might want to take away as well. But that being said, if you have a garden and you have kids and you've seen success with some of the things that you like to do with them, throw a comment down below, and I think maybe we can get a pretty good list going between what I have in this video and your suggestions as well. The first thing I like to do with my older daughter in particular is help me write out the plants on the plant labels. So my older daughter, she's in kindergarten now, she's 5, and she's learning how to read and write. And I thought when I was starting my seeds, I showed her the seed packet and I said, I underlined the word that we were writing. So, there's lots of words on a seed packet. So I underlined the word in particular that I wanted her to write, and she copied it out onto the seed packet. And then, it usually took up the whole plant label, but if there was room, we put in the date, and I got her to practice her writing on the plant label. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another thing that surprisingly my kids love is weeding. It's a weird thing for a kid to love, right? Like I don't remember loving weeding as a kid. My parents didn't have a vegetable garden necessarily growing up. We had a bunch of fruit bushes, but I didn't really ever have the task of weeding, so I can't really say whether or not I would have loved it or not, but I don't feel like I would have loved it as a kid. But surprisingly, and I've heard this from other parents as well, they actually, their kids like weeding, or they liked weeding as a kid. So I think that it's just a matter of kind of how you phrase it and whether you do it with them. So I use a hoe, and I'll have a link to the kind I use. It's awesome. It makes weeding so easy. But I use this hoe, and when I do weed with it, they always try to grab it from me. They always try to take it and want to take turns, which of course makes weeding go very slow. But it's the kind of thing that you'd be surprised when you start doing something in the garden. Watering is another one. Weeding and watering are two kind of garden tasks that not everyone loves, but kids really do like those things. It's something that they can do. They can see the result of what they're doing. Like if you're weeding, you can see the difference before and after very fast. And the only thing I have to say though about both weeding and watering, if you do want to get your kids involved in those, is to give them tools that work. Don't give them necessarily just like plastic or just like tools that might break. I got my daughter these kind of little, this one's actually not too bad. This one has a wooden handle and it's metal, but it will break if she tries to use, I don't use this very much in the garden, so she doesn't really use this. They use the exact same tools that I do. So if you're going to try to find a kid-size version of something that you use, try to make it look very similar. It can be different colors, but try to make it look the same, because if I'm using something with a flat edge, she doesn't want to use something that has a fork edge like this. They want it to be the same. So try to find something that will do the same job as yours, and that way you can both be using the tool at the same time. And this obviously is more applicable to like a little kid where you would be doing it with them. An older kid can just use your tool, of course. But for a little tiny kid, I would give them tools that are cute, that they love, that actually work. I would have thrown it out, but it was kind of like this. But as soon as my daughter stuck it into the soil and she tried to do what I was doing, it just snapped off. Because it was just a toy. It wasn't actually a garden tool. And kids are strong, right? They're strong. They will actually go in and try to do what you're doing. So, I've had adult size adult-made tools break for me in the soil, which is why I tend to spend a little bit more on my gardening tools, because I want stuff that's going to last. But so certainly kid-made tools might not last if they try to do some of the things that you're doing in the garden, especially if they're actually trying to do a good job. So maybe not at the beginning, but if you find that they like what they're doing, you might want to get some practical, like functional, kid-friendly tools to use that are like little versions of yours. My younger daughter, actually both my daughters, love this. I have to get another one now because my 2-year-old, almost 3, can now water as well. So they fight over this watering can all the time. Our other watering can, which was plastic, broke. Of course, I typically don't buy anything plastic in the garden for that reason. So I need another one like this that will actually last and that will actually allow them to both water together and not constantly fight over the watering can. So yeah, I mean, anything that I do, like if I'm building a new raised bed, when I was building this greenhouse, I have a video where I showed how I built this greenhouse, and you'll see my kids kind of running around through the shots. Like, they want to be involved. So anything that I do in my garden that they can help even in the smallest way, I will definitely encourage and welcome their help. And then when it comes to like harvesting and actually eating the food from your garden, you might instantly think like I did. I right away thought, okay, my kids are going to want to eat strawberries, and they're going to want to eat like really sweet varieties of plants, things that they typically want to eat from the grocery store. And I was surprised when I had my own garden and because I grow a lot of very unique varieties of plants. I think it's very cool. And also I grow year round, so typically I'm growing things that aren't as commonly available in supermarkets. But I found that when I started growing my own food, my kids ate a lot of very unusual things that I would not have presented to a 2 or a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, any little age, any young age. And I was really surprised to see that they loved some of these unique varieties in my garden. So one of them is sorrel, and I talked about this in one of my other videos, but my kids devour sorrel from the garden. And I've never bought sorrel from the grocery store. It doesn't last very well, like it doesn't ship well, so it's also not a super popular vegetable, but it has a really lemony taste. Like it's got a really, like a zing to it, and it's not bitter, it's not spicy. Like I love arugula, but it's too spicy for my kids. So they just destroy this sorrel plant. Like I can't keep enough sorrel in my garden right now to possibly sustain the 2 of them. And it's one of the few that my 2-year-old will eat. My 5-year-old's more adventurous. Another one is kale. Like my kids will eat, I can't keep enough kale, at least right now. Last summer, I think it was last summer, my older daughter saw kale and she's like, oh, Mommy, can I eat this? Because I always say, make sure you ask me if you can eat the plants, because I have like flowers and other plants that you can't eat. And like rhubarb leaves, for example, I wouldn't want her to just start eating the leaf because it can be toxic. So I make sure she always asks me like, okay, you can eat everything from this bed if I know the whole plant is edible, or you can only eat this berry, or you can only, I make sure that she asks me. So she saw kale and she's like, Mommy, can I eat this? And I said, yeah, you can eat it. And I'm not going to try to put any sort of preconceived notion on whether or not I think she's going to like it. I just want to try to see what her thoughts are. And she loved it. She's like, this is delicious. And I have never once seen her eat kale that I buy from the grocery store. It's different. It's different when you grow it yourself. It's oftentimes sweeter. And if it's the right time of year, it's got a really, really nice taste to it. I don't particularly like kale in the summer, but in the colder months of the year, kale is really good right off the plant. So I was surprised, but they both now love to eat just kale off the plant. Same thing with the flowers. So all brassicas like kale, cauliflower, broccoli, like kohlrabi, they all produce flowers which have a really broccoli-esque taste to them, but they love it. They were like devouring these flowers off of the plants, and it's funny. It's just not the kind of thing I would have given to my little kids to say, go and try this from the garden. So I think when it comes to harvesting, let them kind of explore and do their own thing and just see what kinds of things they like. Yes, my kids absolutely eat all of our strawberries, all of our berries, we have, you know, those are impossible to keep around if you have kids. Like, they're like the birds. They'll snatch them before you ever see them. And also like peas. Peas are another really good one for little kids. Baby tomatoes, like cherry tomatoes. Another one for really good for little kids. But don't discount some of these other vegetables. So that would be my recommendation as to getting your kids eating more out of the garden. Just try it. And even, you know, go through a seed catalog with them and have them pick plants with you, especially if it has pictures. Say, which, you know, pick something that you want to grow this year. And obviously make sure it's a plant that would work well in your area. But, you know, let them choose, right? Or even give them a few choices. Say like, do you want to grow this, this, or this? And then let them choose and actually be part of that. And then I can, you know, they'll probably be much more interested in eating it if they took part in picking it, if they took part in planting the seed, which I love, my kids love to do with me too. If you're gonna have your kids help you with planting, then I would plant a little bit of extras, because oftentimes they'll just dump a whole ton of seeds in one little tiny seed cell, which isn't ideal. But so just make sure you grow a couple extras, and if the ones that they grew didn't turn out, then that's okay, no big deal. But just having their involvement, they're not going to remember that that's the one that they planted and this is the one that you planted. They'll just remember that they took part in it and seeing the progression of the plant growing. You know, and then I think just making sure that we're letting the kids be kids, right? Not making gardening a chore. Like, I don't feel like gardening is a chore for me. I'm doing it because I love it. I love my garden. I love spending time with my plants in my greenhouse. I love spending time with my plants outside in my garden. I just love being out in my garden, with the exception of, you know, maybe some like terrible pests or like some, you know, catastrophic problem with my garden that unforeseen issue. I don't see many of the chores or some of the many of the tasks that are involved in gardening as being painful or not enjoyable, because I try to make the best out of everything. And if I don't like something, I try to find a way to do it that I do like it. And I have actually grown even more my love of plants and my love of gardening because I try to very much tailor it to my own personality. So I want my kids to also have that same love of gardening. It's funny, my husband and I are both golfers. My husband's in the golf industry, and we're also trying to get them into golf right now. And we're doing the same thing. We're like, how can we teach them how to golf, but not make them hate it? You know, like if your parent is like forcing you to practice all the time or forcing you to like play and you don't feel like playing or something like that, that is the last thing I want. So same thing with my garden. I want to make it so that they enjoy their time. It's something that we get to do that's fun together, because, you know, little kids like to spend time with their parents, especially. I'm not looking forward to the day when they're like, Mom, I don't want to hang out with you. But right now they love hanging out with me. They love hanging out with their dad. It's just, you know, kids love that. So I'm taking advantage of that and doing something fun together that we both love to do, that is going to be productive and also a fun activity for the two of us. So if they get bored of it, or if they're like, I don't really like this, or no, actually never, I've never even heard them say that. But if they're like, they just lose interest, or they see something like, or my neighbor has horses and they just like see the horses and go run over, I'm not going to be like, get back here and take care of these plants. Like, I will let them go and just be with the horses and do whatever it is, like play. So gardening is like a fun activity for them. It's something that they get to do with me versus something that they have to do with me. And I think that sort of just shift in kind of how I'm approaching it makes a real difference. And then in turn, they love spending time in the garden. I don't have to ask them, or I don't feel like I have to tell them like, go and do this thing. So having my kids grow up and learn how to grow food and know how to take care of plants and just eat fresh food out of the garden whenever they want, it's pretty cool. So those are some of the activities that I like to do with my kids in the garden. I'd love to know what you do. That would be really cool to kind of get a list of what everyone loves to do with their kids, and kind of get a sense, so if someone else is watching this video, they can get some additional ideas more than what I've shared as well. And that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.